I'm Ruth Brunton and I used to manage the Transition Mentor Project based in areas of deprivation across Leicestershire. The project worked with children and families who were disproportionately at risk from social exclusion and were therefore likely to find transition from primary school to secondary school more difficult. It was an early intervention and prevention programme, so we were looking at children who would not normally reach the thresholds of criteria thresholds for statutory services. So we were identifying children who would not have severe behavioural difficulties, who weren't statemented, but children who would appear to thrive when they moved to secondary schools but would fall through the cracks.
The concerns are many, and very often on a practical level they're particularly concerned about how they're going to be perceived by the older pupils and how the older pupils are going to respond to them. And even little things like having to ask to go to the toilet, being able to find their way around the school, getting to their lessons on time if they get lost. It really is a considerable readjustment to what they're used to in their primary schools, and what may seem as very small, inconsequential worries to an adult are enormous to them.
A lot of the children are scared to go to the next school because they've heard that such and such is a bully and somebody will wait and get them. And students at the high school are very quick at saying to the younger ones, we're going to wait for you when you get to the school and we're going to get you outside in front and things like that. So pupil reputations is something that worries them a lot as well. A transition mentor is somebody that goes into schools and works with Year 6 children because they worry a lot about the transition from Year 6 to 7. I am employed by the high school to go into the 5 feeder schools and work on the transition, which I normally start from about the end of May through until they leave in the July, and then have continued to work with them throughout the holidays because they still need that link, because the 6 weeks between leaving the junior school and going to the high school, actually it's when all their worries start to come back.
The team worked with the children and families in 3 very distinct areas. They worked with the children in schools at primary school, and we worked on a calendar year. We worked from January to December to enable us to get to know the children and families very well prior to the transition, particularly across the long summer holidays, and then work with them as required in the first term after transition to secondary school. The team worked in the home, in the school and in the community, and they worked with families on parenting skills and support. They worked with the children one-to-one, in small group works and in whole classes near a transition.
This year I've been going into the Year 6 children in each school in the area and working on their transition to their secondary school. We've been playing a transition game which is called Moving On and Moving Up. They've been talking about all their fears, their worries, how they feel about leaving the school, and then I've been able to take them to our next school and show them how the school works, what they do, the various things about uniforms, all the worries that they've got, and alleviate them a little bit. They meet the staff and then they get ready for the transition days, which they then come up and meet people like Sue and other LSAs and the teachers, etc. And it just prepares them for their first day at their secondary school.
Because they're bullied, they should let other people know how they felt when they were being bullied.
So it's all about feelings then, isn't it, again?
I knew someone that was being bullied and she turned into a bully, started bullying her friends and everything just because she got bullied. She went on
Did that made her feel better, Katie? Do you think she felt better for that?
No, it made her feel worse.
Did it?
She was being nasty and she had no friends at the end of the day.
Right, and that's what happens to bullies.
It's their fault though, they don't have any friends.
Eventually people say no, enough's enough, and eventually a bully, I believe, because I was bullied when I was young, eventually a bully doesn't have any friends. They grow up quite lonely, don't they? Teachers in our feeder schools are very, very good at recognising the vulnerable children and the ones that need that extra support. So the way that I've worked it is they fill in a referral form, put down all of the things that they want you to know about that student, and then you work with that student on a one-to-one basis. But you also do a whole class thing, so you pick it up yourself and then pass it on to the secondary school, which is where I'd pass it on to Sue.
The way that the LSA team can help particularly starts from their induction days, and I know this year I took all of the peer mentors out onto the front of the school to meet and greet everybody that came through the doors, and then the peer mentors took the pupils off down to the area where they were all meeting and were going to be taken into the school. There were a few children that arrived with parents in tears, and it was basically reassuring them and letting them know that they could trust us to make it right for them by finding somebody they knew, or if they were new to the area, teaming them up with somebody or that had also just moved to the area, and then spending time in the classrooms with them, recognising when they're showing anxieties about filling in timetables and things like that, and just basically being alongside them, reassuring them, letting them know that they're not going to be in trouble. You know, if there's something they can't do, that people are understanding, and that we're all prepared for their transition into the new school to take some time. I think teachers generally, if they could show some empathy for how the young people are feeling, very often the pupils' anxieties and concerns are disproportionate to how an adult would view a situation, and I think it's really important to remember that. Simple things like some children are too terrified to even ask to go to the toilet, and during the consultation period pupils were telling us they had actually wet themselves because they were too frightened to ask to go. And the embarrassment factor as well, being in a class of new people they don't know, it's very difficult sometimes for them to speak up for themselves. So I think it's having a general awareness of how the pupils will be feeling, and not assuming that pupils are coping just because they're sitting quietly.
The transition project was funded through the Children's Fund, so it was a time-limited project, and it eventually ran for 5 years but was initially funded for 3 years, and we were externally evaluated by the Greenwood Research Institute at the University of Leicester, and we were found to have had a significant impact on attendance and school achievement, when normally children have a dip in achievement.
When I was younger, and I had transitioned from the infants to the juniors to the secondary, and so on, I wish that I'd had people to help me with transition, because it was one of the scariest times of my life, and there wasn't anybody that could talk to me or help me. I went through it on my own, and fortunately had very, very good support from my family. How children would get on that didn't have that support, that had other issues that they had to cope with as well, I don't know. That's a great worry.
As teachers and adults within education, but also parents and any significant adult, can ensure that we maximise future life chances for young people, transition being a critical one.
Some pupils have already experienced in their personal lives a lot of loss, potentially a lot of transitions which could have gone very badly, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to give them the skills and to show them that change is a natural part of life, and if you have the support and the skills to deal with it, even changes that you don't particularly want to happen can go relatively smoothly and not leave a lasting negative legacy.
In order to ensure that as many young people as possible have the best possible future, then we have to ensure that we give them the resilience and the skills in order to make transition at any stage across their lifespan to the best possible effect.
As adults, if we can do anything to help teach children resilience and coping skills, we will be having a much healthier, emotionally healthier generation in years to come.